So this is a short video for our philosophy and fiction class, and this is just basically a few writing tips. So for next time, you need to write a short dialogue of 1-2 pages in which you discuss or consider a philosophical argument. Now, I'll just go briefly over a few things to keep in mind as you do that. So, the first thing to keep in mind is when you write dialogue in fiction, that it isn't actual dialogue. You don't have to write a transcript of or a transcription of an imaginary conversation. You can avoid the filler that happens in real dialogue. It has to feel or it gives the impression of actual dialogue without mimicking what actually happens. A lot of actual dialogue is a lot of repeat, is a lot of filler. If I were to transcribe what I'm saying right now here, even though this isn't dialogue, it would be very different. So similarly, if you're going to write down dialogue, it will not be like actual dialogue, and that's okay. One thing to make it feel realistic is to give each character their own voice. So people might have specific tics, don't overdo them, specific slang, specific ways of talking. Some people might have a sort of more flowery way of expressing themselves, other people might be more terse. Now, what you can do is to help yourself do that is to say it out loud or to emulate it or put it in your head and to imagine these characters if you are somebody who imagines things. I know not everybody who writes does that. Next, if you're going to write dialogue, you have to be careful not to make it too cooperative. I'm just going to give you an imaginary dialogue that isn't particularly good, but just give you a flavor. Are you going to the store? Yes, I'm going to the store now. Will you bring along some chips for me? Yes, I will do so. Don't forget your face mask. No, I won't. I have it in my bag, and so on. So you can see how this sort of dialogue is extremely boring to listen to. So you have to be careful that your dialogue doesn't turn into an interrogation. There has to be a bit of tension, and you can do that by having people not directly answer a question or by rather asking a question if they're being asked a question, and so on. Many beginning writers, they get so engrossed with dialogue that they sort of really go into it, and then they forget the surroundings, and then you have what is called white room dialogue. And white room dialogue is when you just have basically speech that happens in a kind of disembodied plane. So there's no indication anymore where the characters actually are having their dialogue. Now the dialogue needs to be happening somewhere. So in the sample that you read, the story that Eric Schwitzgebel, Johannes Matt and I wrote, that story happens somewhere. It happens in a hotel. We're having cocktails. The characters are having cocktails. They are eating cherries and peanuts. There's a waiter walking around and so on. There's other people. So you have to give some indication throughout the dialogue that there is actually an environment. Now, concretely, if you write the dialogue, you could just write the simple tag like he said or she said. And you might think, oh, that's boring. I'm just going to mix it up and say, he inquired, she wondered, he protested, and so on. And that's fine, you can do that. But the problem is, if you do that in a whole piece of dialogue, one after the other, it feels kind of forced and artificial. Because the word said might be boring, but the reader's eyes just go over said. Like said is like a neutral thing. So you could do like, for example, Roald Dahl would just write he said, she said all the time. And it's not a problem. So you can do that. Or you can put the occasional other word in to mix it up. But you don't specifically need to find synonyms for he said and she said. So that's it basically. Dialogue can be very exciting if you keep these things in mind. Thank you.